Hello, welcome
Hello.
to another great episode of This Uncanny Earth. We're back at it again this week. Spider's going over his shenanigans in nuclear disasterville. Um, he's going to call the
Facts,
vegetable
facts.
beef. I love the vegetable beef. That's a good one. We've got him as the garden of knowledge. Good, because I've got people coming to your house to whoop on you to take your books, so you better fight back. And me, given our current temperature situation, I am hot blooded. Check it and see. Welcome to another fantastic episode of This Uncanny Earth. As always, I am your co-host, Robert Solomon. Next to me is my other co-host, Spider. And when you're gonna have to change this in the credits now, in the
Uh-oh.
opening credits, Steven, you're just Steven. You're the other co-host,
Yep.
Steven. Not the
Mhm.
intern anymore.
Steven has gotten himself a promotion.
He got
Yay.
himself some wings.
Everybody out in the audience, you can fear not, for Steven will not be leaving the show ever.
Ever. When we're
Ever.
both dead and gone, he'll still be doing the
Yep.
show.
I
That's
am
just
the
how
new
it'll
Count
be.
Saint Germain.
He is. He's new Count Saint Germain with the sick
Count
chain.
Steve Germain.
Yeah, I like
Count
it.
Steve Germain. Yeah, there
Yep.
he is. Count Steve Germain. So, news updates.
Thank you, James.
Random vegetable beef in your neighborhood. What is going on, gentlemen? How are we doing tonight? Anybody? Feel
Well,
free.
it was kind of nice weather today. It wasn't blistering hot like it has been.
102.
So here in Ohio, it's
Gross.
been okay. We got an event. We have an event coming
An
up. I
event.
mean, you have an event. But
I have an
I'm going to
event.
be there for the event, and
He's gonna be
there's going to
there.
be children at the events.
Children.
So, why don't we talk about that real quick before we get started?
So run upon us at your own risk. No, I'm kidding. Don't run upon us. So this Saturday I will be at Patsy Hillman Park. They're having a Bigfoot extravaganza, so I'll be there presenting, not on Bigfoot so much, but on the topic that I'm well versed in, giants. But I got some new info and some very interesting things to say. So join me. We will be there. Come hang out with us. Come buy us waters, because if it's hot, I don't want to be drinking because it'd be too hot and I'll sweat to death. Plus, we'll have
Autographs are
children.
$15 a piece, by the way.
Autographs are $15, and if you want a kiss on the cheek, it's an extra $10. So that'd be $25.
He does the kissing. I don't do that.
I do the
I
kissing.
will sell you a banner for $13,000, though.
They will sell you.
I broke the rule again. I know.
You did.
We'll move
You
on.
did. You broke through again. That's right. We can use either your
Move
car or
on from
my
that.
car, because we both have cars. So we can
Dual
drive
car
both.
action.
We could.
I don't know
No,
what that's all about.
Carpool.
I'm not down. We could. We are. That's
Yep.
what we're doing essentially.
Yep.
We're park holding.
Gonna pack it in and gonna take a road trip and eat some snacks and
Yeah.
listen to the kids play in the back and yell at
Yep.
each other and whatever.
Yeah. What kids do best? Get on each other's nerves. So, but anyways, other than that, that will be Saturday, Patsy Hillman Park, Pennsylvania, Fayette County. Come through, hang out. It'll be a good time. I'll be there. Spider will be there. We'll be there. Repping the show because somebody else can't be there. I won't say who. I can't believe we made him and a co-host after all the shenanigans he's been put us through. But
He's
no,
got
that's
obligations now.
fine. Oh yeah, he's got obligations. I will not be presenting my feet pics at the foot thing. So no, I don't like my feet. Anyways,
Really
that's not the
Deadpool.
point. Spider, go ahead and take it, man. This is your show.
All right. Well, last week, as a reminder, we talked about the Manhattan Project and the dangers of the atomic bomb and atomic weaponry. And we got pretty deep into the effects of what happens when nuclear energy is used for warfare. This week, we're going to talk about something a bit more insidious, a bit more, I don't know, because this is what happens when a nuclear disaster happens on home soil that's not from an attack, that's from your own energy generation. And that could happen at any time, as we're going to see in the three examples that I'm going to present to you. The first one is, well, let me ask first. I want to get a gauge of how you guys feel about it before we get into the facts and figures of everything. What do you think would be a worse scenario to have to live through? Having a bomb dropped in a particular area, not necessarily ground zero because you won't live through that, you'll be dead. But if you're in the general vicinity of something that happens and you have to either evacuate or whatnot, or having the local nuclear plant just abruptly go up middle of the night, no real knowledge. There's no sirens. There's nothing telling you. You just got news blasts telling you, oh, no, this happened. Your phone's blowing up with alerts. Got to get running. What do you think is worse? It's not a good choice, but what do you think would be worse? Rob, what do you think?
Oh, man, that's tough.
It is a tough question.
Because with the nuclear, I would obviously think I'd rather take the plant melting down, just because on one side, at least you're not leading yourself into World War III or IV. So, like, just because that plant goes down doesn't mean they're going to be firing nukes off everywhere. You could still get to somewhat safety. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be jam-packed full of people. However, and it can be contained for the most part. Like Chernobyl was contained. A lot of these places were contained. You know, if it hit groundwater, you're going to get a little bit of an issue, but you're not going to have the shock wave that basically blows everything apart. You're not going to have the blinding white light, and with enough forewarning. Because I would like to think for the most part that there is forewarning, except in the case of Chernobyl, which I know all too well, there was no forewarning because the RBMK reactors were absolute garbage. But for me, it would be the power plant, just because I feel like I'd have a greater chance to survive maybe than I would with a nuclear bomb. A nuclear bomb goes off, like you said, if ground zero. But if a plant goes, I might have a better chance of surviving. Plus, like I said, you don't get the devastation in terms of your country basically being, or your whole cities being wiped out. That doesn't take away from the radiation part of the meltdown or the radioactivity leaking into soils and things like that. But just for sheer getting up and heading out, it's going to be the power plant for me.
Steven, same question. What do you think would be worse?
So are we assuming we survive this?
This is assuming that you have some chance of escaping the center of the devastation. Whether you pick up radiation sickness later, it's something different. But assuming the initial event, you're able to avoid the worst of it.
Then I think it would probably be worse to be at the epicenter of the bomb, because, like, assuming that you were to survive, like you said, radiation sickness would be a lot stronger, I feel like. And at least if it was like a power plant or something in the middle of the night, like they're, without any warning or something like that, I feel like that would be more preferable to me, because I have anxiety and I don't want to be sitting here thinking about it the whole time, like, oh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Oh, I see a bomb. Oh, no, it's falling. Oh, no, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? I would rather it just be over quick and get it over with. And speaking of the radiation sickness, if you go far enough into it, they have been doing some reports on Chernobyl about the creatures, but I don't want to spoil that if you're getting into that later.
I'll touch on it a little bit. Chernobyl is going to get the least amount of attention tonight, mostly because it's the most well-known, and we've talked about it a lot. The other two, one is going to be a lot more recent, so that's pretty fascinating because things really are still deteriorating with that. And then the other one was one that you tend to forget about, despite the fact that it was the worst disaster like that that's happened on American soil. So we're going to get into those. A quick note, I remember last week I talked about, in preparation for this episode, that we have a nuclear power plant, the Perry nuclear power plant, which is relatively close by us. It's farther north. It's on the lake, on Lake Erie, and it's in Paynesville, Ohio. And while that's up in the Cleveland area, the effects of that having a meltdown would likely stretch all the way down on some level to where I am in Canton. Not quite as bad as if it was right close in Cleveland proper, but Akron would suffer pretty hard. Rob, you're a bit farther out of Akron, but you'd probably catch a bit of it. But you're farther north than I am, so I'd catch the least of it, but I'd still catch it. Like, it would go like a ways. It's not a you'd really have to do some driving to get out of the full effect
Yeah.
of everything. So that's something to keep in mind when we think about these things. Not that I'm going to sit here and stress about it, but it is an interesting thing to think about, considering how close, as James already knows, where one of these disasters that I've talked about already happened. That was pretty close. So, Chernobyl. A lot of people know about Chernobyl. It's the most famous because a lot of things have been said about it. There's movies, there's all kinds of things. There's a bunch of there's conspiracies about it. There's sci-fi films about it. There's books. There's video games talking about fighting monsters and mutants in the area immediately around Chernobyl. As a refresher, it was the number 4 reactor of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which was on April 26th in 1986. And this was located near, not exactly in, but near Pripyat in the Ukraine. It wasn't the Ukraine specifically then. It was part of the Soviet Union. So it was under Soviet rules and regulations, which was probably part of the reason that it wasn't kept up the way that it should have been. They weren't particularly known for safety in the Soviet Union as far as that kind of thing goes. It's one of only 2 nuclear energy accidents rated at the maximum severity on what's called the International Nuclear Event Scale. What that is, it's a pyramid scale. And rather than try to put the image up on the screen, I'm just going to do this and show you. That's what the scale is. You can look it up. It was introduced in 1990 by the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is supposed to educate people and monitor these things when used for domestic use rather than military use. And it enables prompt communication of safety, significant information in the case of nuclear accidents. And so the fact that this was at the top, this is probably one of the things that they did when they based the scale. They probably figured it can't get much worse than this, which is why it's at the top. But the funny thing is, the third incident we're going to talk about also hit the top of the scale. And those are the only 2 that we know of. And they're separated by a number of years from 1986 to 2011. So it is not uncommon, apparently, to hit the top of the scale if the evidence is any indicator. The response to the accident involved more than 500,000 people, cost an estimated 18 billion rubles, which was Russian money, and at the time it was the equivalent of $84.5 billion after inflation in 2025. And to do all of the maintenance and all the cleanup and everything to this point, it has cost an estimated $700 billion to contain and to try to keep clean.
Fun times.
And it's interesting that there weren't more people that were killed by this because of the scope of this disaster. 2 people were killed by debris and 1's missing, so it could be 3. They never found the 3rd, so you have to assume that's 3. 28 were killed by acute radiation sickness, which is the quick, like, they got it, you're done within a few hours. And there were 15 terminal cases of thyroid cancer, with varying estimates of increased cancer mortality over subsequent decades. So, and while those numbers seem kind of low, it's a lot for an energy plant that didn't involve just straight up explosions. That was just almost all of this was radiation related. Because, as I said, only 2 people were killed by debris in the actual accident. So a lot of stuff goes on. Now, currently, there is a 10-kilometer exclusion zone established after the incident. It's been expanded to 30 kilometers, and it's still, you can drive through it to these days, but you're not allowed to stop. There's fences and there's checkpoints and there's things, because there's roads that go through it from one part of the country to the other. I think you have to go through there in order to get to Russia or something like that. I don't remember the exact geography of it, but you can go through it. It's not illegal, but they do tell you, don't stop. Do not stop. Do not get out of your car. Do like whatever you do, just keep driving until you're through the zone because you don't know. So it's pretty crazy. With all of that being considered, without getting too much more into the details of it, because again, it's a really famous incident. Most of us already know about it. Steven, what do you think was the real cause? Not to get into like conspiracy stuff necessarily, and to get into like, oh, they were doing things they shouldn't. But
Homer
what do you think is
Simpson.
the root cause? Other than that, because Springfield isn't in Ukraine.
No.
No. What do you
I
think is the
mean-
root cause of the disaster, and could they have done something to prevent it?
That's what I was getting at. I think that's what I was trying to mean by saying that is, I mean, I think it was just human error and laziness. And I think if they had taken it more seriously, they could have avoided it. I think it's really just that simple.
Rob, how do you feel about it?
As the person who has studied Chernobyl pretty in depth, I know my way around it quite well. The RBMK reactors were the root cause. They were just poorly made. They didn't know how to contain the fuel rods very well. So those rods started jumping. And once the rods started jumping, once everything started like the casing started popping up and all that, it was too late. And a lot of people got the full blown brunt of that in the command center, and in that area they got hit. A lot of those guys died instantly or got severe radiation burns, which would end up killing you anyways. And so what I think of Chernobyl is it is a lesson not to skimp on what you're making, because it could cost people, a lot of people, their lives.
Now, an interesting bit of follow-up to that before we move on to one of the other disasters is that in the years following, they built a gigantic dome to cover the bulk of the site. It's a massive, massive dome. It's one of the largest construction projects ever accomplished by modern humans that we know of. We're not counting some of the things like the pyramids and whatever like that. Of all of our modern history of building skyscrapers and whatever, it is one of the biggest, most secure. Just it's an incredible bit of engineering. And it took several years to complete. They have to go in and inspect it every so often and make sure it's still holding up. And in the last year or two, with the combat between Russia and the Ukraine, it was damaged by, I believe, a drone. Drone strike. I think they were able to go in and repair it, but it's kind of weird that you never really heard much about it after it happened. You heard that, oh yeah, the dome was damaged, and then within a week, the news cycle had moved on to something else. And
distraction.
There's no good way to look it up either, because with all of the way that there's a lot of news blackout stuff that goes on over there. We hear a lot of things in the news about strikes and attacks and whatever, but we're only hearing the surface stuff that sounds good to the people watching, that makes whatever side look good or look worse. We're not hearing all the nuts and bolts. So I don't know how far along they got with the repairs of that. It could still be leaking. You don't know. I would be interested in finding out, and the more I thought about it just yesterday when I was doing some last minute checking on it, I was like, I never really heard anything about that after that incident. And you can't find anything about it. You find a lot of conspiracy stuff online. There's a lot of people talking about stuff with no citations.
Basis in fact, right?
Yeah, so it's hard to say. It makes me a little nervous. Not super nervous because, it's obviously not going to reach me here in Ohio. But it's still...
What about the solar
it's
flares?
Something to wonder about.
What about Manfred Mann's Earth Band's album Solar Flare?
Oh no,
that's a great album, by the way.
I was asking if he was worried about the solar flares.
Not particularly.
No. Not particularly.
You don't need to worry about that kind of stuff all the time. Really. We get those
Yeah,
all the
we
time.
we get them like Ohio gets bad weather.
And I mean, we
Yeah.
are what, like 50,000 years past our expiration date, anyways.
We went through that last bout of storms like that happened like I don't know, it was 2 or 3 years ago. They had this thing about the solar storms are going to be rolling blackouts across the U.S. and we got through that fine.
Yeah.
You hardly heard anything about it. I do want to point out to James, you're getting too excitable. You keep jumping the gun on everything we're going to talk about.
Yeah, geez, James.
He keeps
we
guessing.
we let him
he's
be
guessing the
number
plot.
one. We let him be number one, and then he's
Oh.
just he's trying to be the new intern.
He's guessing the plot here. The spoilers.
He's trying to be the new intern.
And real quick, I found some
Real quick.
information
Find
on
it.
the dome. You're talking about the Capitol Dome?
No, is that what it's called?
Chernobyl.
It's the Chernobyl Dome.
The
Oh,
Chernobyl
no.
Dome. No,
Nope,
you're
never
fine,
mind.
James.
Never mind.
Let me
then.
see if I can find if they have what it's.
This is talking about the Tennessee Capitol Dome in July 2024.
What does that have to do with Chernobyl in 1986, bro?
I don't know.
We might have made him co-host way too early. I don't know if this man
He's
is
jumping the
ready.
gun here. Let me find because I'm sure
I
it's
was a
listed in
little
the
too
article.
general. I was a little too general in my search.
Yeah, I guess so. No, the thing is, we have to understand something about nuclear energy. It takes a long time to dissipate, and they have covered that up. Like if you go near, like if they would open it up so you can go into it, it'd be over. You'd be dead. You would dead quick. You wouldn't just die. You would die an agonizing and gruesome death.
We're going to touch
That's
on that
what
at the end of the show, too.
radiation does, dude.
We're going to get into the effects.
Unless
We're going to
it-
let everybody
unless
get through the
Or
show,
tardigrade.
and that'll be our trigger moment. If anybody's kind of like, oh, gross, that's going to be it. So, end of the show.
See, you've been warned.
But the dome is called the Chernobyl New Safe Confinement.
Okay, I found
and
it now.
It's a mammoth concrete sarcophagus. The crane operators worked blindly from inside lead-lined cabins, taking instructions from distant radio observers. They didn't even see where they were placing it because they couldn't be close enough to be able to. If you were close enough to see it, you were close enough to die.
Yeah, facts.
Is what it was. That's how difficult this thing was. It wasn't intended to last very long either. It was only supposed to be 30 years. And it's just a massive, massive thing. And they're trying to keep it. Oh, they've since added to it. They slid a new one over top of the other one. Now that I'm reading further along.
Oh,
Yeah, I found something on Intellinews that said the Ukrainian government, with support from the EBRD, France, and other
Yes.
partners, is actively planning repairs.
Yeah,
allocating
they're going to
tens of
repair the
millions of
newer one because
euros.
the original one in 2013, part of it collapsed, causing a new release of radioactivity because it stirred things up, like fell in, and
Yeah.
so there's a second one, and that's the one that's been hit recently, and they're still keeping an eye on it. So that's Chernobyl. Crazy situation. The next one, let me make sure I've got on my notes here exactly my order. Next is 3 Mile Island, and this one is a lot closer to home.
New Jersey.
Pulling it up, make sure my notes are good on it.
It should be New Jersey.
It's in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Oh, I thought it was New Jersey.
Nope.
Wow.
Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. That's how close this was. And it was in 1979. So it just beat out where a few of us were going to be born here and that kind of thing. So,
imagine Spider if he would have been radioactive. He'd be Spider-Man.
Hey, copyright strike. There goes the video.
Nah.
It
You
was
can
a
say
partial nuclear meltdown of the Unit 2 reactor of the 3 Mile Island Nuclear Generating Station. It was located on the Susquehanna River in Londonderry Township, Dauphin County, near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It's okay, James. You're just jumping ahead. You're spoiling my thunder.
He's excited, man. He's an excited.
It's a good topic. I know
It's
people get
good.
excited
It's good.
about
We're
it.
having fun. Good times.
The reactor accident began at 4 in the morning on March 28th, 1979. So, like I said, like in the middle of the night. That was why I phrased my example at the beginning of the show the way I did, because it could happen when you least expect it. It is the worst nuclear power plant accident in U.S. commercial history.
Yep.
And it is a level 5 on the 7-point international nuclear event scale. So it's 2 spots below Chernobyl and the other one that we're going to talk about. It began with failures in the non-nuclear secondary system, followed by a stuck-open pilot-operated relief valve in the primary system. So a tiny little part that's just supposed to open and close to make sure the pressure isn't too bad. And it allowed large amounts of water to escape from the pressurized, isolated coolant loop. So it wasn't able to cool itself down because it didn't have enough water flowing through it. And it was compounded by the initial failure of the plant operators to recognize the situation as a loss of coolant accident. When it happened, they didn't know what it was, and they weren't quick to find out. They were trying different things, like, oh, what's going on? And it's 4 in the morning, you know? They're probably just like, oh, need some more coffee. Something's wrong with the reactor. Let's take a look. Oh, no. And then, so there were design flaws, as in Chernobyl. There was poor control design, the use of multiple similar sounding alarms, so you got confused easily by, what's this alarm mean? I don't know. What's that one? Oh, that's a fire alarm. Oh, no, this is a reactor alarm. Oh, this is this, but they're all the same. They sound the same. No differentiation. And a failure of the equipment to indicate either the coolant inventory level or the position of the stuck open valve. And it was a pretty big deal because it caused a movement not too long after among anti-nuclear activists who always felt that it was unsafe, and it bolstered their position for quite a while. They did studies analyzing the rate of cancer in and around the area since the accident, and it did determine that there was a statistically significant increase in the rate of cancer, and there was a causal connection linking the accident with cancer, although difficult to prove definitively. So while they worked quick and they were able to contain it relatively well, there was still a bunch of fallout afterwards. And I don't mean fallout like nuclear fallout. I mean political fallout and societal fallout. At 6:56 a.m. was when they declared a site area emergency. So it was almost 3 hours later that they declared that there was an issue. And less than 30 minutes later, they declared a second emergency. They notified the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, which then contacted state and local agencies. They had a press conference. And I'm trying to see what the actual cleanup and what they did. It took years for them to find out the root of all the things that went wrong here. In 2009, one of the people involved in Congress wrote that it took 5 weeks to learn that the reactor operators had measured fuel temperatures near the melting point, and they didn't learn for years until after they'd actually opened up the reactor vessel to inspect it, that by the time the plant operator made the initial phone calls, roughly half of the uranium fuel had already melted.
Ooh.
So it was a nasty disaster. Let's see. I'm trying to find out. It's got a lot of detail on what they did in the process. I'm trying to find what the surrounding area, what they talked about, or how they dealt with it, and if they were evacuated. The lieutenant governor on March 28th, hours after the event, said everything's under control. Didn't want anybody to panic. There were conflicting statements about radioactivity releases. Schools were closed, and residents were urged to stay indoors. Farmers were told to keep their animals under cover and on stored feed, not on anything that was outside at the time. They advised the evacuation of pregnant women and preschool-aged children within a 5-mile radius of the 3 Mile Line facility. The evacuation zone was extended to a 20-mile radius on March 30th, and within a few days, 140,000 people had left the area. But more than half of the 663,500 population stayed within the 20-mile radius. They either left a little ways and thought we're far enough, or they were like, nope, this is my house. I'm not going anywhere. And according to a survey conducted in April of 1979, 98% of the evacuees had returned to their homes within 3 weeks.
Wow. I don't think it's safe yet.
So, and I think that hampered a lot of the follow-up. I think a lot of people were not interested in measuring the radiation at that point. I think there was, for whatever reason, the people were like, no, this is where we live. We don't feel sick. We're fine. Who cares? And it hampered the local and state government from being able to do much to follow up on it. And I think there's still a lot of questions. I don't think we know the full extent of the damage at this point, not for lack of trying. I think there was definitely an increase in potential cancer and various other after effects of limited radiation exposure. But people just didn't care. They didn't want to leave.
Imagine what that would do to their genes.
They probably have to wash them a couple times.
So with all that being said, and this is right next door in Pennsylvania. Harrisburg, it's a bit of a drive, but it's not far, all things considered. You could get out there in a day. You could get out there in a day, and you could probably get back. You know?
Yeah. You can make a day trip out of it.
So, what do you think, Rob, about the response to this, and conversely about what the people, how they responded after the fact? Because there's a lot of questions still about it, even now.
See, it's a little bit tougher than it is in Chernobyl, because Chernobyl, that's it. They tell you to go, you go. You know, yeah, a complete disaster too. But when they tell you to go, they tell you got to go. Americans are hard-headed. They're going to be like, what do you mean I got to leave my house? You going to pay the house payment if I leave the house? No, you're not. I'm staying right here. You can't make me go anywhere.
It's me.
So we're a little more hard-headed like Steven, per se. I feel like the response could have been better. But at the same time, I have to wonder how close can they get to certain things within a certain frame of time. And in that certain frame of time, is something going to kill them no matter what they wear? So that's the kind of things you have to take into account. And it always is something very, very minute and minuscule that causes the slow chain reaction to build up. And then after a while, you know, I'd be interested to see when their last safety check was. That's the one thing I think I'd be interested to know, is when if I was going to investigate something, I'd want to know when your last safety check was. So for me, I feel like it could have been done better, but at the same time, it wasn't Chernobyl. So it wasn't as, I don't want to say impactful, because it would still be impactful, but it wasn't as much of a failure as Chernobyl was. Like, Chernobyl as a whole was just a failure. The concept was a failure. The RBMK reactors were just failures. This was supposed to work, but a little piece failed. So, you know, I'm just glad that it wasn't a Chernobyl level event. So I will say that.
And it didn't explode like the Chernobyl reactor did. This was a slow meltdown of everything. And while they didn't recognize it right off the bat, eventually they caught it. And I think they did try their best to do what they could with it rather than
course.
just immediately get out of Dodge.
Because
Steven,
we do have to understand something. I don't want to say this. The Chernobyl, when it blew the lid off, basically shot that lid into space.
yeah,
Like it shot the lid all the way up in the
Oh,
air, and
wow.
then it came back down with a heck of a fury. So
yeah.
you can't compare the two in terms of, excuse me, which was worse, because for me it'll always be Chernobyl, um, because it was an explosion and the radiation just
Yeah.
went whoop. They didn't have anywhere else to go but out. So, anyways, I just wanted to point that out. My apologies.
Steven, same thing. What do you think about the initial response? Do you think more could have been done to prevent the accident? And do you think people jumped the gun heading back into town?
Well, yes and yes. I think it sounds like, once again, it sounds like they kind of cheaped out on a cheap component. And if they had paid more money for a sturdier component, they could have prevented that. And as far as the people moving back into town, on the one hand, I wish they had studied it more and like gone in there in safety suits of some sort. We're smart as a species. We could have figured out a way to get in there safely, I'm sure. And gone in there and done experiments and tested soil samples and tested animals that were there that were still alive and stuff like that to test their radiation resistance over years and over time. But at the same time, like you said, with everyone just moving back in immediately, it's like, well, what's the point?
Right.
Well, that's 3 Mile Island, which was certainly a terrible disaster. Our final disaster is pretty fresh still, significantly fresh as far as everything goes, because a lot of us saw this happen, not in person, of course, but we saw it on the news and witnessed it while it was happening within our lifetimes here. Um, and the other thing about it is, unlike the previous two disasters, it had very little, if anything, to do with human error. This was entirely a freak accident that nobody could have really predicted. And of course, we're talking about the Fukushima nuclear accident. This happened on March 11th in 2011. It was a major accident. It started at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in Okuma, Fukushima, Japan. Pretty sure I'm getting most of those right.
Yeah, you got it.
You're
The
doing good.
direct cause, again, wasn't the person. It wasn't shoddy construction. It wasn't just people messing about. It was the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, which resulted in electrical grid failure and damaged nearly all of the plant's backup energy sources, which it took out everything all in one big just whoop, done.
Yep.
This led to an inability to sufficiently cool the reactors after shutdown, compromised containment, and resulted in the release of radioactive contaminants into the surrounding environment, which is still occurring to this day. And they're still studying that because they don't know exactly how bad it's going to be yet. And this is 2025. So it's been that amount of time, and the effects of this are still not entirely known. This is the other number 7, top of the heap, top of the pyramid on the nuclear event scale. So they equaled this disaster as badly as Chernobyl, despite having happened in a different way. And it is the worst nuclear incident since Chernobyl. 3 Mile Island was bad, and we've had other events smaller than that since, but this was another just awful, awful disaster. Now it says, according to the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation, quote, no adverse health effects among Fukushima residents have been documented that are directly attributable to radiation exposure from the plant incident. Insurance compensation was paid for 1 death from lung cancer, but they claim that that doesn't prove that there was a relationship between radiation and the cancer. They just said, oh, well, you just had cancer. It's not necessarily from this. 6 other people have been reported as having developed cancer or leukemia. 2 workers were hospitalized because of radiation burns, and several other people sustained physical injuries as a consequence of the accident. Now, 2 big points about this. The town of Fukushima. It's a small town. It's not that big. Most of the people either worked at the plant or it was just a small little way station for people passing through. I've seen documentary footage of the town. They evacuated that completely. And people since have been allowed to move back. Now, the town is still super empty. There's hardly anybody there. What I watched, and you can watch this also, this is not a plug because we're not affiliated with this or anything like that, but there's a show on Amazon. It's by a man named James May, who used to drive cars on a show called Top Gear back in the day, for anybody who's interested in that. He does travel shows once in a while where he goes to different countries, and he went to Japan, and he visited Fukushima. They allowed him to have a very limited, like he couldn't take his whole camera group. He had to take like a couple of people, and he had to have a guide, and they gave him a dosimeter to check for radiation. And there were spots where if you walked into them, the thing would go nuts and just boom, 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 boom. And he talked to a couple of people that had moved back, ask him, why would you move back here? And they told him, this is our life. This is my store. This is my restaurant. I don't have anything else to go for.
Memories.
This is where I live, and this is where I'm going to live. And I don't feel sick. I feel okay. It's true we don't get a lot of business anymore because nobody comes through, but that's what people are doing. And it's really sobering because he walked through the town, and there's plenty of spots where people they left their cars in the garage. They left their plates on the table. They left their coats on the hooks. It's like a ghost town in spots where people just all of a sudden disappeared, leaving everything that they owned just in their apartments and in their houses. And the grass is tall in different spots. The government doesn't go in and do anything about it. Like in Japan, a lot of places, they got to be well kept. You got to keep your plants well kept, your trees well kept, the everything. They don't do that here. They don't go in and check on your stuff. They don't give you citations for it. They're just like, hey, nope, you want to go back there, it's on you.
Yep.
They let you go back, but they told you we got nothing to do with it. And it's crazy to see footage of it. It's weird, and it's quiet because there's hardly anybody there. The other big thing about it is that when they released seawater into the reactor to cool it down as an emergency measure, they then pumped the seawater back out into the ocean. There were some things that they did that supposedly were to try to decontaminate it, but there was no guarantee you were going to scrub it clean of the radiation. And it was theorized at the time, and people quietly kind of stopped talking about it since then. It was theorized that the contaminated water could reach as far as California and still be radioactive on some level. Not in a way where you reach in and you're instantly dead, but it still could cause issues in both marine life and in people. So, Robert, do you remember when Fukushima happened? What were your initial thoughts? And in the intervening time, have those thoughts changed at all about what maybe could have been done or anything specific?
Japan is a very technologically advanced society, and I think we have to understand this. Going into this wasn't like 3 Mile, this wasn't like Chernobyl. This was an earthquake that basically cracked this power plant. Pardon me. And I don't think you can. Japan's prepared for a lot of things. A lot of things. But I think
They're
there's some
prepared for
things.
tsunamis most of the time. Like
Yes.
tsunamis are like, okay, we got ready, we got alarms, we got evacuation stuff.
But to me, I remember when it happened. I was either just starting Sears or I was working at the country club. I forget what was the date. Do we have a date on that one?
2011. So it was
We
a
have a
couple
date?
years
Do
before.
we have a date though, like a
Oh,
specific? Because then I'll be
um,
able to say.
I believe it
'Cause
was
I remember seeing
another
it on my
March date.
computer.
Let me double check here. March 11th, 2011.
Okay.
I believe that was at least a few years before we met.
That was,
think we
yeah, I
met
didn't
yet.
work at Sears for 4 more months. So yeah, I remember seeing it on the computer on the news, NHK, all of that. I remember thinking to myself, this is going to be huge because this is Japan. This isn't just some run of the mill country. This is a technologically advanced and sound society, so there's going to be some serious repercussions. And as we've seen, like especially on shows like Dark Tourism, where they take people into that zone, and then those people are told, "Don't touch the dust, don't do anything,
Yep.
don't even try to go over here and do this," because everything is radioactive. The dust is radioactive. It's just it's a sad situation, but I don't think that much could have been done to prevent it. I think this was something that, you know, these tsunamis and things and the earthquake right after that just because I remember that year the tsunamis were kind of bad and they were talking about it. And it was more of the effect of the tsunamis that Fukushima had happened as opposed to it just happening on a disaster or a fail safe that didn't enact. So for me, it's probably the saddest of the three, just because you wouldn't think that. Japan, you're like, oh man, those things should be shielded in earthquake gear or something. You know what I mean? So that's what that it was a very harrowing or a very sad experience. And like I said, it just kind of got swept away a little bit. I think I haven't heard about Fukushima in years.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because I still think about it once in a while. Like, I wonder whatever happened with that, and I'll look up stuff every so often, and you'll see some things. But it's another one of those things that's kind of like a big terrible thing that they've tried to kind of quietly sweep away and hope that nobody remembers.
Yeah, but you can't because the place is still. I mean, people moved back. People end up moving back to Fukushima. I can't remember when, but they moved back. So it's like, what are you gonna do? And it's not like it's here in the States where okay, we could just live 20 miles. Land there is oh, there's a word I had. It was on the tip of my tongue. I was on the precipice of it. Land is basically, a hard thing to come by in Japan. I'm not saying you can't get land, but at certain points the land runs out. So what are you going to do? You got to move back. You don't really have a choice. What are you going to do? I mean, honestly, what are you going to do?
And Steven, same thing. What do you think? Do you think anything could have been done to stop this from happening? And if so, what? Or what are your thoughts about the situation?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Rob. I don't really think there's very much they could have done to solve that or prevent it. It's just a natural disaster. And about the earthquakes, well, they're having a lot of earthquakes over there right now, and I'm a little concerned for Japan right now.
Yeah, I agree. It's oh man.
And it's even worse because like Spider said, they're actively trying to hide this. Like they don't want people to know about it because it's ruining their tourism. And they're like being so quick to shove the news articles aside and push it away. And I'm taking notice of that because I'm like, why are they being so quick to push this away? Because I understand it's hurting your tourism, but what good is having tourism if they all die too?
But that's the thing. They have specific tour guides and things like that. They can take you through these zones, and then they're like, "Hey, don't go here, you're dead. Don't go there, you're dead."
Yeah.
And they sign waivers and things like that. So I mean, And dark tourism is the thing. It's a legit thing. People go to these places expecting to be, wowed and
The adrenaline.
appalled, and yeah, it's like. But that being said, I would go to both Chernobyl and Fukushima. I would do both because I want to see what this looks like. I want to see up close. I don't
I
want to
would
see the dust up close, but I would go. Yeah, definitely. I want to see like
I would like
man's
to study
bodies.
the animals.
And that's the other thing. We didn't touch very much on it, but there is
Mhm.
changes in the insect life.
Yeah, I'm
There's
going to
changes
talk
in the
about that
animal
on
life.
my Saturday show.
Yep.
Which is great because I'm
Yeah.
not going to be able to get into a lot of that with my final part of the topic here, but I do think that's an important topic
Yeah.
to cover. Because again, the marine life in Fukushima is another big one
Yeah.
that's touched on, and they talked about it initially when it happened that the effects could be far-reaching, and they said, and as James mentioned, there were photos of wildlife from the ocean just coming up on beaches, just mysteriously dead, and there was no real cause why. And a lot of it, I think, could have been attributed to that, to be perfectly honest. To close out this, we're going to get into, and this might be a little uncomfortable for some folks. So if you want to tune out now, you don't want to hear about it, then this is your opportunity. This is effects of radiation exposure to the body. Some of these are kind of minor, some of these are major. These are all based on more or less doses of radiation that aren't just a massive, like it's not an atomic bomb dropped right on you. If an atomic bomb hits you when you're at ground zero, you're vaporized, you're melted, there's bad things are going to happen. This is more the slow effects of getting too much radiation over a protracted period of time that isn't instantly going to kill you, but potentially
You'll
it's
wish
going to
it
shorten
had.
your lifespan by quite a lot. Of the effects, fatigue, you're going to be tired, of course, because your body's fighting off radiation, so obviously you're going to be tired. A sore throat is an early side effect because any of your mucus forming membranes are going to start reacting first because that's your body's natural defense to anything trying to get in. A late side effect might be lymphedema, which is throat cancer related to, again, getting into the mucous membranes. Hypothyroidism, osteoporosis, as your bones weaken to the effects of the radiation. It breaks down bone tissue. Hair loss, which can happen sooner rather than later. Also nails, fingernails can depending on the severity. Sexual dysfunction, infertility, muscle weakness, again tied to being tired because your muscles in your body are trying to fight off the radiation. Skin changes. You could get patches of skin that
Melt
initially
off.
could just be rash, or they could be almost like a burn, but it's not a burn, developing into skin cancer and that kind of thing. Swelling or tenderness in different parts of the body, again, as your body is trying to fight off the effects of the radiation. A lot of this, at least half the symptoms are things that your body is trying to do naturally to fight off the radiation. And with a normal sickness or a normal disease or a virus or whatever, these things would work. You'd be uncomfortable for a few days and then you'd feel better generally. But with radiation, it's sticking around and you're going to have constant, just these symptoms are going to continue because they can't fight the radiation off. And eventually the body's just going to fail. Mouth sores, again, related possibly to the mouth cancer. Difficulty swallowing, again. Headaches, because your brain is absorbing something different that it's not used to. It's interfering with the electrical patterns in your brain. Vision changes, nausea and vomiting, bladder or bowel changes. You're going to have trouble keeping it in. Joint problems, thyroid problems, secondary cancers, cognitive changes as brain tumors potentially develop, localized pain, and damage to the musculoskeletal system, which is what connects your muscles to your bones, your ligaments, the various things that tie everything together. And that's just that's the basics.
For example, the radium girls, when they got, they were doing that stuff, and they told them to lick it, and over time they got radiation sickness. Some of them, there's pictures of it. They're very graphic. Look them up on your own if you want to see them. Their jaws literally just fell off.
Yeah,
because the connective tissue just fell apart.
it's gone.
Yeah.
Just the radiation breaks it down. It's like
Some of
an
them had
energy
holes in their
form.
cheeks.
Yeah.
It's like acid, but in energy form. Instead
Yeah.
of being a material, a mineral, something that's physically there,
It's chemical.
it's not even that. It's just an energy effect that breaks things down, and it's frightening to see pictures and see this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think, oh, well, that's atomic weapons. That's not, nothing like that will happen if nobody fires any atomic weapons. But as we've discussed, a nuclear disaster could happen at any time,
Yes.
just for a variety of reasons. It could be because somebody was asleep at the switch. It could be because they didn't make the part right. It
Yeah.
could be because there was an earthquake or a wildfire or something threatening the area. And now in our infinite capacity to destroy ourselves, we have hackers. We have hackers who can attack the grids, who can get into the computer systems, because since everything's controlled on the internet, to be able to monitor from a distance, because the home office says
Y2Q.
the home office can say, oh, well, I don't want to be at the plant because I don't want the plant to have a problem. Well, I'm there. I'm going to set up the internet so I can monitor it from my house.
Yep.
And because the internet is there, the hackers can say, oh,
Yep.
I see your nuclear plant. I think we should melt it.
Okay, I don't want to go too far into it, but there is a thing called Y2Q, which is the belief that one day quantum computers will get to a point where the hackers will be able to decrypt literally everything, including military encryption and everything. It's like Y2K, but with quantum computers.
It's a semi-legitimate thing to think about. I mean, the likelihood might be a certain level, but we've already seen hacking attempts attack regular electrical grids.
Yeah.
Things that just are basic coal-fired plants and various things of that nature. And it's something definitely to think about, because as more and more things get connected, it almost seems like you should avoid connecting some of these things to the internet for whatever reason. Like, there should be no reason to connect them.
Right.
But I see why, for monitoring, for the distance, and for whatever possible safety. But at the same time, how much safer is it going to be?
I do want to say the reason Bigfoot is usually sighted, or any cryptid is sighted around nuclear power plants, are because radiation. Because they remember the nuclear bombs dropping, right? And there was an uptick in cryptid sightings, UFO sightings during that era. So it's kind of safe to say that these creatures, or these entities, or whatever you want to call them, know that we like to blow each other up. So they're like, we got to kind of keep an eye on these yahoos. We don't want them blowing everything up. So, but yeah, that's what I think. I think Bigfoot, because it's radiation. Once again, radiation's a weird thing. It's a weird thing, because you can sense it, but you can't. Like, once you've sensed it and know it, you're dead, or you're gonna die. That's it. There's no, like, it's a very invisible killer.
The other thing about it too is that there's a constant level of natural radiation floating around on the planet all the time. Like, we are on some level irradiated to a certain point, partially because of certain metals in the earth radiating up through the crust, our exposure to the sun,
Our
the
technology.
way cosmic. Well, let's take all that out of the picture for just a moment and just say naturally. There's naturally occurring radiation from a variety of sources, cosmic rays that filter through the magnetosphere. And there are plenty of animals that can detect certain levels of radiation. And they use them to guide them in different directions. They use that almost like electromagnetics. They use that to tell where to go when they're trying to migrate, or whether they're trying to hibernate. It's part of their system. And it's potentially possible that an increase in that radiation might attract some of these animals to be like, oh, this is really interesting. There's more of this. And because it's so massive, it might not be naturally something that they're supposed to be afraid of, which is another part of the coin. So you can look at it from a variety of ways, and there's a lot of different theories about it. But final thoughts. Should we, knowing the consequences and the potential for disaster, should we continue using radiation as an energy source? I don't know if I'm qualified to say yes or no definitively on that, but I do know there are some things that we use every single day that use radiation, and most of the time we're perfectly fine. We've got microwaves in our house, and microwaves use a level of radiation, not like the old days. New microwaves are not like the old days. The original ones were straight up like irradiate your food and cook it. Don't stand too close to the microwave when you do it.
They might cook you too.
Yeah,
So,
you put it in and you didn't stand too close. You were
no.
had to stay a little ways away.
Take a
It
couple
was in the
steps back,
manual, like
Chief.
don't get close to the microwave while it's in operation. But now it's not a big deal. Like it's minuscule because they have other things in there that are doing the work. And we have a lot of medical procedures where you've got X-rays, you've got all these different things, and they give you. I had an X-ray from my hip once because I got hit by a car once. That was a fun story. It was a very slow crash.
I know the story too, so that's.
But I had to get it looked at because they didn't
Uncanny
know.
behind the scenes.
And I limped on it a little bit, and I was like, well, we should probably find out if there's any kind of fracturing. It doesn't feel like it, and I'm probably going to be fine. It's probably just bruised. So they take the lead-lined blanket, and they put that on you to make sure that you get the bare minimum that the machine requires to look through your body. So we use radiation daily for a lot of things that are commonplace. By the same token, cancer rates are significantly higher than they have been in years past. Cancer is still one of the number one killers in the world, especially in developed countries. And that's a big difference because developed countries have all the technology. So they're not dealing with cancers as badly in third world countries. They have other things. They've got different diseases and they've got different things that they can't get rid of because they don't have the technology or the medicine. But
they also couldn't make as much money.
What's the trade-off? I mean, the trade-off is you've got these technological things that might irradiate you and murder you in other ways, or you can take your chances with everything else. So, but what do you two think? Steven, what do you think? Do you think it is still safe to use radiation in what we're doing, or do you think maybe it's time for a change?
Both. I don't think it's necessarily safe to use radiation in what we're doing, but I do think that it's necessary for the advancement of science and the current comfort level that we know in modern day society, even just as common citizens. So I think it's important that we continue using it, but as in it being time for a change, I think it's time that we stop hiding things and let a little more medical science out into the wild. You know what I'm getting at without saying it directly. And I think that it's very important that we find a way to, if not completely eliminate, then at least, like you mentioned with the lead line blanket, during x-rays, further minimize our exposure to radiation when using it.
Rob, same question.
I don't know, man. That's a tough one. Just because, you can't stop an earthquake, you can't stop the shift of tectonic plates, you can't stop all of these things naturally from happening. So you get a mean tornado that runs through, or you get something of that degree, or you get a crazy ice storm, which I'm sure they would be fine. But I think that as long as there are natural disasters, I just don't think that nuclear power is the way to go per se. If they could find a way to
do it underground, maybe
refine it and make it to where it's closer to this ability to power something like a ball maybe, and that could be slotted in somewhere. And then even if a natural disaster happens, the ball just gets clamped down on by lead or whatever, and it's housed so that it can't radiate.
Like a beryllium capacitor, maybe.
I don't have the answers per se.
It's a loaded question, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
It is
because there's people that are for it. There's people that are gung ho about it.
Yeah.
It's the cleanest energy, and it is until it has to be
until it
cleaned
melts
up.
down.
Until it
Yep.
has to be cleaned up. Then it's just pure chaos. And human beings have error factors. So we start building power plants. All it takes is one thing to be off, and then you might have a slow meltdown on your hands. So I don't think the trade-off is worth it. I don't think it's worth the clean energy, but there might be a natural disaster. Now, if you can put it somewhere there's not natural disasters, but then, you still got to worry about things like missiles and wars and things
People
like
are
that.
people.
People are people. And all it takes is one to say, well, I think that should go. So I'm not for nuclear energy personally, but I understand the reasoning why people are behind it. So.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being a part of my discussion over here. We had a lot of good talk. This was a serious episode. This was a super serious episode. Not much joking around in this one. We weren't off in the weeds on this one. So, what do we got going on next week? Next week, we're going to visit India and Pakistan with Mr. Robert Solomon. We're going to find out why do they hate each other and why do they want to completely just nuke the crap out of each other. What's the point? And that's what we're going to find out. Steven, you said you were going to explore some more of this topic on your Saturday show.
I'm gonna look into some of the animals that have survived in these places like Chernobyl and Fukushima, and some of the animals that have survived in highly radioactive areas, because there has actually been scientific evidence that not only the animals but also some people in highly radioactive areas have been able to not only survive but even this is going to sound very weird, but I don't know how else to word it. They figured out how to restructure or activate certain hidden areas of their DNA that can repair their DNA structures from the radiation. Like tardigrades are a great example, just to give you a teaser. Tardigrades can survive 1,000 times the radiation that a human can, and we've even tested that by sending them into outer space, and they can just survive out there like it ain't nothing. There's something that is known as an extremophile, which can survive in highly, extreme temperatures.
Excellent. So I'm looking forward to that show. Before we go, I want to say quick, without any details, without anything, thank you, Mr. James Boggs. You know why. Thank you. I'm going to talk to these guys about it afterwards. We appreciate you. You are awesome. You are number one, and you earned your crown. Thank you so much. But that's it. Let's take us out. Let's do the thing with the thing and the thing on the side.
Why be boring when you could be uncanny? We will see you folks next week. Have a beautiful day.